2 of the trial for Ryan Routh, the man accused of attempting to assassinate Donald Trump on his Florida golf course. It follows a bizarre day of opening statements yesterday, with Routh continuing to represent himself. Though he was supposed to have 40 minutes, the judge cut him off after about 5 for rambling, including making statements about the future of the human species, Hitler, Henry Ford, and the Wright brothers. Joining me now, NBC's Gary Grumbach, and back with us, Lisa Rubin. So what's the latest we're hearing today from inside court, Gary?
So things seem to be a lot more on the rails today than they were yesterday. As you mentioned yesterday, what we saw was Ryan Routh representing himself, which means he was talking directly to the people that were on the ground that day when the attempted assassination allegedly took place. And he was asking them questions about the scenario, but it was also not related to the scenario. Things about Hitler, things about Vladimir Putin, about Benjamin Netanyahu, topics that have nothing to do with the case at hand. As you said, he cut him off. Judge Cannon cut him off after about 5 minutes, saying, quote, "We have limited patience, and Routh does not have an unlimited license to make a mockery of the dignity of our courtroom." Now, many of the officials that we have heard from today are from Secret Service, or from the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, and FBI agents, folks that have been directly involved in this case, and they're talking about the step-by-step exactly how this went down, where they saw Ryan Routh, and the evidence that he had on him at the time. Chris?
So, Lisa, what stands out to you from what happened in court today?
I think a couple of things. One is just how methodically prosecutors are taking the jury through the evidence they have that Ryan Routh is the person who committed this crime. Everything from mapping the crime scene to talking about how the rifle was detected, peeking through the chain link fence at Mar-a-Lago, to the people on the ground who first notified the Secret Service that they could detect the weapon. Then we also heard from Palm Beach County bomb squad official who was in contact with the Good Samaritan, who essentially said, "I took a picture of this guy escaping. This is what his license plate looked like." And we heard from that individual yesterday. So I think just one thing that stands out is the orderliness of the prosecutor's presentation contrasted with how disorderly Ryan Routh's own thoughts are. And of course, that makes this a very challenging situation, not only for Judge Aileen Cannon, who's overseeing this trial, but for any judge who ever has a pro se defendant before them in civil or criminal litigation.
What does it mean for a prosecutor? You just do your job and let the judge handle the other side?
You do your job, and you also remind the jury to focus on the evidence, because of course there's an additional wrinkle here. The defendant here, who is appearing for himself, is not just any old defendant. He is a defendant who is accused of an attempted assassination against the President of the United States. So that posed particular challenges for jury selection. But the prosecutors, again, have to remind people again and again, this case isn't about what you think about our president, Donald J. Trump. This is about whether or not the defendant, Ryan Routh, attempted to assassinate the current president of the United States, which is a federal crime.
We mentioned about what happened yesterday in opening statements and some of the things that he talked about, including the Wright brothers and so on. Does the judge worry about what the jury might conclude from that?
I think the judge has a couple of things to balance when you've got a pro se defendant before you. On one hand, you want to be particularly lenient because a defendant who doesn't have a legal education doesn't necessarily know procedural rules. On the other hand, you can't allow your courtroom to be run amok by somebody who's not used to being a repeat player there. And so in the same vein that today she paused, according to reporting, a few times to try to imply to Ryan Routh, here's a good opportunity for you to object or to ask a question. At that same time, yesterday, sort of making it clear to him, you're not going to turn this into performance art. You have to make your presentation relevant. You have to ask relevant questions on cross-examination. You have to keep it focused on what this procedure is supposed to be about.
Lisa Rubin, Gary Grumbach, thanks to both of you.